Hank the Cowdog, Original Adventures, Chapter 2. Quills, just part of the job. It was kind of a short fight. Coming down, I see them quills aimed up at me and tried to change course. Too late, I don't move so good in midair. I lit right in the middle of him and bam! He slapped me across the nose with his tail. Sure did hurt too. Brought tears to my eyes. I hollered for Drover to launch the second wave, but he had disappeared. Porcupine took another shot at me, but I dodged, tore up half an acre, and got the heck out of there. As I limped back up to the house on pin-cushioned feet, my thoughts went back to the scene and the evidence I had committed to memory. It was clear now. The porcupine had had nothing to do at all with the murder, because porcupines don't eat anything but trees. Drover had found the first set of tracks he'd come to and had started hollering about a coyote. I had been duped into believing the little runt. Yes, it was all clear. I had no leads, no clues, and no idea who had killed the hen. What I did have was a face full of porcupine quills, as well as several in my paws. I limped up to the yard gate. As you might expect, Drover was nowhere to be seen. I sat down beside the gate and waited for Loper to come out and remove the quills. A lot of dogs now would have set up a howl and a moan. Not me. I figured that when a dog got to be head of ranch security, he ought to be able to stand some pain. It just went with the territory. So I waited, and Loper didn't come out. Them quills was beginning to hurt something awful. The end of my nose throbbed, felt like a balloon. Made me awful restless, but I didn't whine or howl. Pete the barn cat came along just then, and his tail was stuck straight up in the air and was rubbing along the fence coming my way. He had his usual dumb cat expression, and I could hear him. He came closer. I glared at him. Scram, cat, beat it. He stopped, arched his back, and rubbed up against the fence. What's that on your face? Nothing you need to know about. He rubbed and purred, then reached up and sharpened his claws on the post. You sure look funny with all those things sticking out of your nose. You're going to look funny if you don't run along and mind your own business. I'm not in the mood to take any of your trash talk right now. He grinned and kept coming. I started to ignore him. He started rubbing up next to my leg. I looked the other way and pretended he wasn't there. Sometimes that's the best way to handle a cat. Let him know you won't allow him to get you stirred up. You have to be firm with cats. Give them the slightest encouragement and they'll try to move in and take over. Pete rubbed and purred. I ignored him. I told myself he wasn't there. Then he brought that tail up and flicked it across the end of my nose. I curled my lip and growled. He looked at me and did it again. Flick. It tickled my nose, made my eyes water. I tried to sneeze. I tried to fight it back, but couldn't hold it. I gave a big sneeze, and them quills sent fire shooting through my nose. Kind of inflamed me. Don't you see? And all at once, I lost my temper. I made a snap at him, but he was gone over the fence into Sally Mae's yard, which is sort of off limits to us dogs, even though Pete can come and go as he pleases. It just don't seem fair. With the fence between us, Pete knew he was safe. He throwed a hump in his back and hissed. And what was I supposed to do? Sing him a lullaby? Talk about the weather? No, sirree. I barked. I barked loud and hard, just to let that cat know he couldn't get me stirred up. The door opened and Loper stepped out on the porch. He was wearing jeans and an undershirt, no hat, no boots, and he had a cup of coffee in his hand. Hank! Leave that cat alone. I stopped and stared at him. Leave the cat alone. Pete grinned and walked off, purring and switching the tip of his tail back and forth. And I could have killed him. I whined and wagged my tail and went over to the gate where Loper could see my nose. He looked up at the sky, took a drink of coffee, swatted a mosquito on his arm, looked at the clouds again. I whined louder and jumped on the gate so he couldn't miss seeing that old Hank, his loyal friend and protector of the ranch, had been wounded in the line of duty. "Oh, don't jump on the gate, Hank." And he went back in the house. 20 minutes later, he came out again dressed for the day's work. I had waited patiently. My nose was really pounding by this time, but I didn't complain. When he came out the gate, I jumped up to greet him. You know what he said? "Hank, ooh, you stink. Have you been in the sewer again?" And he walked on down to the corral. Didn't see the quills in my nose again. When at last he saw them, we were down at the corral. He shook his head and muttered, "Boy, Hank, when are you going to learn about porcupines? How many times do we have to go through this? Drover never gets quills in his nose." Well, Drover was a little chicken, and Loper just didn't understand. Nobody understood. He got a pair of fencing pliers out of the saddle shed, threw a leg on me, and started pulling. Oh, it hurt. It hurt so bad. Felt like he was pulling off my whole nose. Ooh, but I took it without a whimper. Well, maybe I whimpered a little bit, and we got her done. Loper rubbed me behind the ears. "There, now try to stay away from porcupines." He stood up and started to dust off his jeans when he noticed the wet spot. His eyes came up and they looked kind of wrathful. "Did you do that?" I was well on my way to tall timber when he threw the pliers at me. I couldn't help it. I didn't do it on purpose. The quills just got hurting so bad that I had to let something go. Was it my fault that he had me in a leg lock and got in the way? Make one little mistake around this ranch and they nail you to the wall. I laid low for a while, hid in the post pile, and nursed my nose. It was about 10 o'clock when Sally Mae discovered the murdered hen. End of chapter 2.